والسلام على رسول الله. Don't need this. Okay. When Kamal asked whether the next course, inshallah, will be on Sirah or not, and I said probably, because it will depend. Number one, whether you will want a next course. Number two, you will select the topic. We'll give you certain topics. So it will depend actually on the surveillance that we are going to perform towards the very end of the course. The last lecture of that course, inshallah, will be on the 21st. And I hope that that will be one day before Ramadan, by the way. And I hope that all of you come and give your input. There will be evaluation forms and surveillance forms, which will be very important to us in the design of the next course, inshallah. Today I have the task of addressing Moses. Let us agree that I'll call him Musa, okay? He is Moses. Those who I don't like translating names. I don't see it meaningful. So to me, Moses is Musa and Jesus is Isa and Muhammad is Muhammad, not Muhammad. So you know what I mean. When I say Musa, you know what I mean. I have the task of addressing Musa in the Quran. I want to remind you that when we do that, we are not exactly studying Musa. Remember, this course we are studying the Quran. So you cannot study the Quran and be familiar with the Quran as the main objective of the course is to make Quran available to the common people, to people like you and me, without addressing the different styles of the Quran. And one of the major styles of the Quran is to give the message not through direct narrative or orders, but sometimes it gives you a context, a story. And from the story, you derive out of it whatever you can. It is like giving you a whole meal, and your body will take vitamin C and iron and things, and if you don't need the other, you will not. It is giving you a whole context, and through that context, you can get the message. So my main objective here, yes, may be to tell you about Musa alayhi salam, but my main objective really is to tell you about the Quran and how it delivers the message in forms that are like that. Why Musa in particular? You notice that we selected three messengers, three pioneers, amongst those that the Quran talked about. We selected Jesus, peace be upon him, that was addressed last week. We selected Musa, and we will talk, inshallah, about Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Those are case studies, as examples. It is not that we are trying to cover the whole thing. We will find soon why Musa is a very suitable material to tell us through his story something about Quran and about the message of Islam. Musa was mentioned by name in 138 positions in the Quran. So it's not a name that came and went or was mentioned 2 or 3 times. The mere fact that that name is mentioned 138 times is telling us something, that and it is a book for the Muslims, and for humanity it's not exactly the Bible that we are talking, or the Torah. This is the Quran. It is then telling us that you Muslims have to pay attention in a great deal to this story, to learn Islam, to know what Quran is talking about. These 138 times are spread over 33 surahs of the Quran. In other words, if I want in this lecture to cover everything that was said about the Quran, about Musa in the Quran, I will have to address 33 surahs, which means that we live here slightly after midnight. And of course, we are not going to do that. The story then is used to make the understanding of the message complete. And this will take us immediately to that style of stories in the Quran, because it is a very important chunk of the Quran, where the Quran is delivering things through telling stories. And we have to understand here that sometimes those stories are really built like a very complex story, like a short novel, and sometimes they are mentioned as a snapshot, the same story. And the question will come, why should one story be repeated in 33 surahs? And why then the name of a messenger will be repeated 138 times? Of course, if you are reading a very casual reading of the Quran, or a very biased reading, like some of the Orientalists, you say, okay, and you read very interesting things, that because the Quran is repetitious, and the Quran is repetitious because the Arabs are dumb. You have to keep repeating things for them to understand. So you have to tell them about Musa in 33 surahs. So why didn't we tell them about Muhammad in 33 surahs, or about Adam, or about... No, but this is what the claim is. And this claim overlooks any serious reading or any objective reading of the Quran, which is typical in the story format, which you can get the same story, and you can tell it, I can tell you the same story 100 times, any story, and each time from a different angle, and each time emphasizing certain moral of this story, and each time delivering a different message from the same story. And this can happen with any literature, by the way, not only the Quran. You can take any story and you can use it and tell it with different arrangement, with different emphasis from different angles, throwing certain light on certain events or certain persons within the structure of the story to deliver something which is completely different. And this is actually one of the characteristics of the stories, of the story style in the Quran. The other characteristic is actually based on that the same story can be told in 2 sentences or 3 sentences, and it can be told in 3 chapters. Because this is the flexibility that the story format can give. And we have this joke in Egypt when we were young, that this was this sheikh who used to spend a long time telling in a very wonderful way the story of Prophet Yusuf, and he says again and again and how he went to jail and how he came out, and people get very happy and gave him a very good meal. And one day he stumbled in a very lousy meal. So they told him, tell us about Joseph. He said, what's the big deal? A child got lost and was found. So it really, any story can give you that kind of flexibility. It depends on what kind of message that you want to emphasize. A third characteristics of the stories in the Quran is there is more emphasis on the moral of the story than on the personnel or the places. When you read the Bible, for example, you get complete details about who is the son of whom, and the grandson of whom, and the niece of whom, and the married whom, and went to where, and did what, and ate what, and got drunk, and did this, and etc. In the Quran, the message is completely different. It tells you the story because it is using the story to deliver something. Anything that's irrelevant to this deliverance is omitted and is not mentioned. And you can find the story in great detail, but all the details are revolving around that particular message. You will find any detail that is irrelevant. For example, I don't care whether the stick that Musa was carrying was 3 feet or 4 feet or 5 feet. It doesn't matter, because this is not the issue. The issue is that this stick changed to be a miracle to empower him to do certain things, and so on and so forth. And this is what we notice in all the stories, but particularly in a story that's so complex and so much repeated and occupied such a huge area of the Quran as the story of Musa. Because I'm not going to cover the 138 verses, I will select things that will illustrate what I just said, that the same story can be told to illustrate different things. The first, and those of you who take notes, well, as usual, I lost my notes. Anyways, the main, the first place where we will find the story emerging in the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah number 2, and when it's starting with verse number 40. If those who take notes take that, they might try to study that. And here you will find the story is mentioned in reasonable detail. But you will find something very interesting. The story is basically not talking about Musa himself. Most of the story here is talking about his people. It is using Musa, using this line of story to tell us something about the environment and about the people. And it starts for so many verses, beginning يا بني إسرائيل اذكروا نعمتي التي أنعمت عليكم وأوفوا بعهدي أوفي بعهدكم وإياي فارهبون. Oh, the children of Israel. So he's talking about the children of Israel. Remember the blessing I blessed you with. Keep my covenant, I keep yours, and heed me. That was the opening of the surah here, of the verses here that are talking about Musa, and it keeps on talking to the people of Musa until it tells them أتأمرون الناس بالبر وتنسون أنفسكم وأنتم تتلون الكتاب أفلا يعقلون. Are you going to order people of righteousness and you forget yourself while you are reading the book? How come you may do something like that? So we find that the main narration is about the people of Musa. Then it talks about the story of the people. وَإِذْ نَجَّيْنَاكُمْ مِنْ آلِ فِرْعَوْنَ. We saved you from the chiefs of Pharaoh, who were torturing you. يَسُومُونَكُمْ سُوءَ الْعَذَابِ. They slay your children, they keep your women in slavery, and وَفِي ذَلِكُمْ بَلَاءٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ عَظِيمٌ. This is a horrible test from Allah. Then we saved you through Exodus when we parted the sea, and we saved you and we drowned Pharaoh and his people. You find here is talking about the delivery of the people across the sea. They were saved. The enemy was drowned. Then he says, وَوَعَدْنَا مُوسَى 40 لَيْلَةً. We give Musa a certain appointment after 40 nights. ثُمَّ اتَّخَذْتُمُ الْعِجْلَ مِنْ بَعْدِهِ. And then you built the calf of gold to worship. وَأَنْتُمْ ظَالِمُونَ. While this is obviously wrong. Then in another part, the story will go on, where Musa is delivering a test from God to the people. إذ قال موسى لقومه إن الله يأمركم أن تذبحوا بقرة, where the name of the surah came. Allah orders you to slay a cow. And instead of them saying, yes, we hear and we obey, they start arguing. They start asking the kind of questions that people who don't want it to do will ask. If you tell me, bring me a glass of water, and I don't want you to bring you the glass of water. As a matter of fact, we used to do that a lot when we were young. And when we were old also, I tell you, what color of glass? Okay, white glass. How big? That big. You want it full or half full? This is the kind of questions that the person who is reluctant doesn't want to do. If you want to give me a glass of water, I give you a glass of water. And so Allah says, Musa says, Allah says you sacrifice a cow. They say, what cow? He says, a yellow cow. I'll describe it to us, a yellow cow with a spot. Oh, of course we will do, but tell us more about the cow. It's a cow that's neither big nor small, neither fat nor slim, until they came to a very specific cow. Then, as the Quran says, فَذَبَحُوهَا وَمَا كَادُوا يَفْعَلُونَ. At last they sacrificed it, and they were about not to. This is indicating the sluggishness and the reluctance of a certain group to obey the commands of Allah. And here we come from verse number 39 in Surah Al-Baqarah to verse number 85 with all these great events and great stories, but we really don't understand anything about Musa himself, right? We know that he was telling his people to do so and so and so, but obviously the camera here is concentrating on the people, not on Musa, not on the leader. It was more or less talking about his people. And so when someone says, how come the Quran talks about the story of Musa in Surah Al-Baqarah, then in Surah number 7, then in Surah number 8, it is your job to look which angle the Quran was looking at, so that you can get this panoramic, comprehensive message that Allah is sending through these different angles. And this is why when we will take one session, inshallah, that will be, I think, 2 lectures from today, about a recommended way of reading, this will be one of the recommendations. If you read about Musa, trace him in the whole Quran. And not necessarily on the same night, not take 1 month. But at least when you finish, you know what message is sent to you through this story. Then I take you to Surah number 19. And here we'll find again the same story, but interestingly enough, it is not a camera running now, it is a snapshot. Click, click, click. Picture, 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 that will give you something. Here, the verses say, it's verses number 51 through 53 in Surah number 19. وَاذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ مُوسَى. And mention in the book Musa. Then, إِنَّهُ كَانَ مُخْلَصًا وَكَانَ رَسُولًا نَبِيًّا. He was chosen for God. He was chosen. وَكَانَ رَسُولًا. He carried a message. وَكَانَ نَبِيًّا. He was a prophet. And we talked about the difference between a prophet and a messenger. Every messenger is a prophet, but not every prophet is a messenger. A prophet is a person with special quality. A messenger is a person with a special quality who is supposed to deliver a message to people. He has a specific task. So from this line, واذكر في الكتاب موسى إنه كان مخلصا وكان رسولا نبيا. Covered these areas. Chosen, messenger, and the prophet. Then goes on. وَنَادَيْنَاهُ مِنْ جَانِبِ الطُّورِ الْأَيْمَنِ وَقَرَّبْنَاهُ نَجِيًّا. And we called him from the right side slope of Sinai, and we made him close in a mystical communion. So it tells us about that whole chapter of God choosing Musa, and in Sinai became so close, God talked to him and gave him a certain task. Then the third line, وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُ مِنْ رَحْمَتِنَا أَخَاهُ هَارُونَ نَبِيًّا. And because of our grace, we joined him by his brother Harun, Aaron, and about Harun, Nabiya. He's a prophet, he's not a messenger. So, finished. That's all what is said about Musa. Those are 3 snapshots, but can tell you a lot. I repeat, واذكر في الكتاب موسى إنه كان مخلصا وكان رسولا نبيا. Remember Musa, he was purified and chosen, he was a messenger and a prophet. We gave him the task on the right side of Sinai, and we made him close, and we supported him by his brother who is a prophet. Really, if you take these 3 lines, they will cover great part of the story. But the Quran here followed that style because the rhythm of the surah was talking about so many prophets and the messengers, giving snapshots about each, so that you underline certain things and you retain them in a certain thing. Then we find Musa was talked about in Surah Al-Kahf from verse number 64 all the way to verse number 82. But here also is talking about a totally different aspect. It is, Musa here is a student, is a trainee, is a man learning wisdom from another man. So he travels with a man, and the man tells him, you will not be able to persevere with me. وَكَيْفَ تَصْبِرُ عَلَى مَا لَمْ تُحِطْ بِهِ خُبْرًا. How are you going to stick into it if you don't know what I am doing? And he says, no, I will. And Musa go through this very humbling experience that's mentioned in Surah Al-Kahf, learning, discovering himself. But again, the surah here neither is talking about the people of Musa nor about the person of Musa. So it is not actually a repetition. It is a totally different aspect that we wanted to know about Musa alayhi salam. Then if we try to take one of the comprehensive areas, most comprehensive situations in the Quran that talked about Musa is Surah Taha, which is Surah number 20, and those will be the verses that cover a vast area from verse number 9 all the way to verse number 97. And here we will find a totally different style and totally different kind of information that we can gather and we can learn. And it is a great learning experience to Muslims until eternity. You will find that there are things that are of great relevance to us now in 1995, 96 as Muslims who are trying to find their way around. And here the surah, after talking to Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, it immediately, all of a sudden, will say, وَهَلْ أَتَاكَ حَدِيثُ مُوسَى. Have you been told the story of Musa? That's to Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. So obviously this story is very important then. Then the Quran goes through the story in a very interesting way, in a very complex way. As a matter of fact, modern novels are trying to do that. You started the story from the middle or towards the end, and through series of flashbacks you cover the beginning. So you don't start chronologically saying he was born, he grew up, he got married. No, he starts while he was way advanced, and through the dialogue, through flashbacks, it brings up the memory of childhood, etc., etc. So it is a complex story here. It is not like the ones that we mentioned before. And here we find the Musa. Let me allow myself to say that the curtain is opened to find Musa is in the desert with his people, and they were lost. Even the Quran at this stage does not tell us when? When was that? It takes a research to try to put it in a certain chronology. But this is how the theater started. Musa lost, and the issue of feeling lost here is very important. He has a burden, he has some followers with him, he doesn't know what to do. Then he tells them, I see a fire at a distance. إني آنست نارا لعلي آتيكم منها بقبس أو أجد على النار هدى. I see a fire, let me go either bring you a piece of fire or I find some guidance there. From here on we have to look at the events and at the symbolism. A man is lost trying to find the energy and the guidance. It doesn't have to be very limited to the very basic events. He is lost, he wants energy and the guidance. He saw fire from a distance. Fire is energy and the light at the same time. So he says, wait. And we find here Musa. Now we are starting to know something about Musa himself. He's responsible. He's a leader. He's a pioneer. He is taking bold steps. So there is a leadership quality here. And most of you know the story. When he reaches there, he finds not only the energy and the guidance, he finds the ultimate energy and the ultimate guidance. Because over there, he gets the calling from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as the story says, he hears Allah, فَلَمَّا أَتَاهَا نُودِيَ يَا مُوسَى إِنِّي أَنَا رَبُّكَ فَأَخْلَعْنَا عَلَيْكَ إِنَّكَ بِالْوَادِ الْمُقَدَّسِ طُوًى. O Musa, I am your Lord. Take off your shoes. You are in the holy valley of Tuwa. And then comes in a breath-catching succession what will happen. وَأَنَا اخْتَرْتُكَ فَاسْتَمِعْ لِمَا يُوحَى. I have chosen you, so listen carefully to the inspiration that's coming to you now. And comes in a summary the message of Islam, actually. The message of all religions in a summary. إِنَّنِي أَنَا اللَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنَا. I am Allah, the one Lord. There is no other deity but me. This is item number one in the message. فَعْبُدْنِي. Dedicate yourself for me. وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِي. Establish religion for my remembrance. إِنَّ السَّاعَةَ آتِيَةٌ أَكَادُ أُخْفِيهَا. There is a day of judgment that's about to come. فَلَا يَصُدَّنَّكَ عَنْهَا مَنْ لَا يُؤْمِنُ بِهَا وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ فَتَرْدَى. Don't let anybody swerve you away from the belief of the day of judgment and the accountability. These are the items, the articles, the corners of the message of Islam as it is expressed through all the messengers of Allah. The oneness of Allah, the dedication to Him, the establishment of religion, and the belief in the day of judgment. This has been repeated all over in all religions and in Islam. So this was in a very summarized way here through the story of Musa. The articles of the message have been elaborated. Then comes after that what will be needed then. For just imagine yourself walking somewhere, stumbling, minding your own business, want to get some fire, and Almighty calls you and tells you that. I think you'll be scared to death. And of course this is exactly what happened. Musa was very, very scared. Then we find Allah telling him, وَمَا تِلْكَ بِيَمِينِكَ. What do you have in your right hand, Musa? He has his staff, his cane. And Musa responds that this is my staff. But again, it's a different kind of conversation. It's not an abrupt conversation. He didn't want to end the conversation. Probably he is dazed. Probably he wanted an open dialogue. So he doesn't say, it is my staff. He says, it is my staff, and I use it for walking, and I discipline my herd and bring it together, and I use it for so many other things. This is the conversation of a person who wants the conversation to extend. When you come and tell me, how are you? There are two ways of responding. I can tell you, good. I think I'm sending you a message, I don't want to talk to you. Or you can say, how are you? I say, don't want to talk. But if you tell me, how are you? I tell you, I feel great. As a matter of fact, today I ate good scrambled eggs, and I really had this, and kids were in the house. I wanted to talk. And this is exactly was the kind of response from Musa, that this is my stuff, I do it with it. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now is equipping him for the task. He tells him to throw it down, he throws it down, it becomes a snake. Then Allah tells him, take it and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid is a theme that's very important, because it will be repeated. It will be repeated in humankind, it will be repeated in human history, it is repeated in the story of Musa. Our enemy is fear. When we are afraid, we can't do what needs to be done. So you will find in this story that issue of fear has been mentioned a lot. Say, خُذْهَا وَلَا تَخَفْ. Just take it, we'll bring it back to the way it was. We will just bring your hand up, it will be illuminating. We are just showing you some of our great signs. So here the messenger received the message, knew what the message is, and is also being empowered by certain signs of God that will make him not afraid to pursue the task that he is about to do. Then the task comes here in the briefest, shortest possible expression. اذهب إلى فرعون إنه طغى. Go to Pharaoh, he became a tyrant. That's the mission impossible, so to speak, that was given to Musa. A man who himself is a fugitive, he has nothing at all, he is lost and was lost. Now he is commissioned to go to Pharaoh for one reason, that we are incompatible with tyranny. Tyranny is not accepted by God. And this should be deeply ingrained in the minds and the hearts of all the believers. Tyranny is an enough reason for Allah to send a messenger to deal with it. اذهب إلى فرعون إنه طغى. That was the message. Then we find here the Musa, and as I'm re-emphasizing, now we are understanding lots of things about Musa himself. He says, رَبِّ اشْرَحْ لِي صَدْرِي. If you want me to do it, I need certain things also. I need you to open my heart to that mission. It's not easy. وَيَسِّرْ لِي أَمْرِي. I want you to interfere to make things easier for me. وَحْلُلْ عُقْدَةً مِنْ لِسَانِي يَفْقَهُ قَوْلِي. Resolve the knot in my tongue. I want to express myself, the power of expression. وَاجْعَلْ لِي وَزِيرًا مِنْ أَهْلِ هَارُونَ أَخِي. And make my brother a supporter of me, a helper, to strengthen me and to be my partner. وأشركه في أمري, partnership. So we will find Musa here is illustrating and is indicating the very things that any of us will need if he or she are about to take a great mission to guide people to Allah and to fight tyranny. We need a psychological, ambitious, comfortable attitude. اشرح لي صدري. We need Allah to help us with this very difficult task. We need to express ourselves clearly, because the power of expression is very important in the progress of humanity. And we need people that we trust to become our partners. So we find in the story here, in that summarized way, everything that's needed and will be needed forever until the day of judgment has been mentioned to Musa, and he says كَيْ نُسَبِّحَكَ كَثِيرًا وَنَذْكُرَكَ كَثِيرًا, so that we keep remembering you, etc. إِنَّكَ كُنْتَ بِنَا بَصِيرًا. Then we find the response of Allah here, and here we find the story is doing that technique that's quite interesting. He says, okay, Musa, you'll get what you want, and this is the second time, or this is another time when we bestow on you a great blessing. Then he reflects back on the very own experience of Musa. Nothing you can learn from like your own experiences. Nothing can admonish you better than you reflecting on your own life and on your own experience. Then you supplement that by other people's experience. But if you put your hand in the fire and you got burned, the best way to tell you don't put your hand in the fire again is to remember this experience. That you have done it, you knew what happened to you, so you will not do it again. In the good things and in the bad things alike. So here the Quran reminds Musa with his, we go back now from that very advanced stage to the very early stage, to the very childhood stage. إِذْ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمِّكَ مَا يُوحَىٰ. Remember when we inspired your mother to put you in the chest and to throw you in the river. And then you are picked up by your enemy and my enemy. Here again we find can I have some water, please? Some water. We find the importance. Thank you very much. Hide it under the chair or what?
What kind of glass?
Yeah, what kind of glass? Yeah. We find here the importance of the symbolism that's carried in the very real story. I don't think that nothing is more powerless and helpless than a newborn baby in a chest thrown in a river. It sounds really bleak, doesn't it? It sounds quite desperate, that the situation and the tyranny was so horrible that a mother found in her heart, through the inspiration of Allah, that it is safer to throw her child in the river rather than to try to keep him or to hide him. And so she does, but the interesting thing is he's not picked up by a fisherman or by a priest or by a rabbi or by a saint. He's picked up by the very one who is getting out to kill all those kids. It's interesting irony that again should teach all of us that no matter how miserable things are, no matter how bleak it might be, no matter how helpless we might feel at certain time, embedded in that apparent weakness, a power that's unbelievable. Something totally different to the expectation came out, as the Quran said, that when Pharaoh took him, لِيَكُونَ لَهُمْ عَدُوًّا وَحَزَنًا. He will be the one who will really make their life miserable. That helpless little thing in the chest, in the river, was the one. So Allah is reminding him that if this have happened to you, this irony happened to you because you were taken, now that part of the story, you were taken to the palace of Pharaoh and you established, you and your brother, and you grew up there, etc. This in itself is a miracle. As long as it happened to you, you have no reason to hesitate now. Not only that, but we joined you back with your mother through the story that you know. Then you spent years in the place of Madian. So there is a gap here, which is his youth, his vibrant, dashing nature that made him in support of one of his people kick the other guy and the guy dead, that made him run away from Egypt to Madian and hide there, where he actually lived a certain life and showed gallantry when he offered water to the two girls who are unable to get the water, and where obviously one of those girls fell in love with him. The expressions in the Quran, تمشي على استحياء, she's coming bashful and a little bit embarrassed, telling my father would like to talk to you, so he's going to talk to the old man, and he goes there and talks and he gets married. That whole chapter, which indicates a very important and very educating things, is not mentioned here except in these few lines. It will be mentioned in another surah of the Quran. So I'm making the point that it is not repetition. It is here we are emphasizing certain things. In another situation, in another surah, the Quran will talk about the detail, even how he found the two girls unable to get the water, and how he got the water for them, and how he sat down under the tree, and how one of them came walking to him, and how he met with the father, and what's the agreement of the father with the father that for 10 years he will do this, and after 10 years he will do that. All this has been abbreviated here. So وَلَبِثْتَ سِنِينَ فِي أَهْلِ مَدْيَنَ. You spent certain years in the land of Madian, and in that part of the Quran did not address that at all. He left it to another part to deliver another dose about another subject. But here, ثُمَّ جِئْتَ عَلَى قَدَرٍ يَا مُوسَى. Now you came for a plan. So here is the Surah Taha is emphasizing that. The message and the plan. It's not emphasizing these other details. ثُمَّ جِئْتَ عَلَى قَدَرٍ يَا مُوسَى. Then وَاصْطَنَعْتُكَ لِنَفْسِي. I prepared you for my mission. I made you for my mission. Then here comes the order again, as if all this was between brackets, to remind him through his own experience. اذهب أنت وأخوك بآياتي ولا تنيا في ذكري اذهبا إلى فرعون إنه طغى. Now here again, now is not go, it's now go, you and your brother. So his brother joined, now became a partner. Never be reluctant in remembering me, because without that spiritual supply, anyone who is struggling for a cause will fail. Keep remembering Allah in that struggle, then he gives him the technique that you find is very pertinent to us. اذهبا إلى فرعون إنه طغى فقولا له قولا لينا. Go to Pharaoh, he's a tyrant, speak to him softly in a mild way. I think this is telling all of us something. You don't have always, even if you are right, to be confrontational. Even if God is with you, in case of Musa, I think he was sure. He was sure that God is with him. This doesn't make him arrogant or haughty or nasty. The Quran is teaching him, go and talk to him mildly and softly. Maybe he will remember. Maybe he will be full of apprehension. So go and talk to him softly, something might sink in. And this is, I think, telling all of those who are in similar situations not to be judgmental. Because we have that tendency that that guy is bad, no matter what you do, he is bad, why should I bother? Or I should go and curse him. No, Pharaoh himself that became the symbol of arrogance. Allah saying, as far as you are concerned, you talk to him in a mild way. And of course, this is a very important story for us, and very important lesson in the story for us. Interestingly here, the issue of fear that I said, قال ربنا إننا نخاف أن يفرط علينا أو أن يضع. Sometimes it gets you wonder. They tell Allah we are afraid. After he showed them and did them and showed him the signs and reminded him of his childhood, fear is a very real thing. It's a very real human nature, human weakness that we should acknowledge. Because the alternative is to pretend that you are not afraid. We do lots of that. We'll get them and we don't care, and if they cut us in pieces, and the moment they hear a bullet, everybody disappears, ducks, and or send somebody else to die, which is very fashionable. So fear is real here, and so they say we are afraid. Then Allah reassures them, لا تخافا, don't be afraid. إنني معكما, I am with you. أسمع, I hear. وأرى, I see. I don't think there is anything more reassuring than that. In spite of that, when they went to the confrontation, فأوجس في نفسه خيفة موسى. When they threw their things at him, he got scared. Then Allah told him, لا تخف, don't be afraid. So fear is a very acknowledged thing. It is just what is needed is always to run back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't pretend that you are not, and don't run back to anybody else, because you can run but you can't hide. You can just go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you say, you promised your support, I need it now, and things of that sort. The conversation with Pharaoh is also, how many minutes do I have? 5. Okay. We'll finish Pharaoh in 5 minutes, and we'll the conversation with Pharaoh is very interesting also, because Musa went to him and talked to him softly and things like that, and he requested a very specific thing. أرسل معي بني إسرائيل ولا تعذبهم. Let my people go and don't torture him. He's not talking about the internal affairs of Egypt. He's not threatening the authority of Pharaoh. He doesn't want to change the regime. He just wants torture to stop and the oppressed to leave. Very, very legitimate request. Not to tyrants. I think the majority of people in this room lived under tyranny. At least most of the immigrants who came from places like I came from. The tyrant doesn't accept that. Number one, he doesn't accept that you make sense. That's bad, because it shows that he is stupid. Number two, he wants people to be under his thumb. That's part of the status. That I can't kill those people, I can't torture them, I can do. So once you say I wanted them out, you are threatening, and you find the response is very similar to the responses that you read in our papers. We discovered a conspiracy. And this is exactly what Pharaoh does. He doesn't say they are wrong, they are right, they are... إن هذان لساحران يريدان أن يخرجاكم من أرضكم بسحرهما. There is a conspiracy, they are coming to kick us out. There is a coup d'etat prepared. They got together to kick us out. It's not that they want to get out. The guy wants to get out. No, he wants to get us out, and so he collects the benefactors of the regime, the parasites of the regime, who in ancient Egypt, of course, were the sorcerers, the magicians, the people of knowledge and techniques. And he hits them where it hurts. Tells them those are two sorcerers who are coming to spoil your perfect way and to replace you. فَأَجْمِعُوا أَمْرَكُمْ ثُمَّ أَتُوا صَفًّا. Prepare yourself and come as one solid body to face this danger the danger of Islamic fundamentalism, the danger of terrorism. And we find 3 people playing karate. That's the conspiracy. It's the same logic. What the Quran is telling us through the story, it is the same logic. It never changed. In confronting tyranny, it is the same logic. Then we will find anyways that Pharaoh was not that bad, by the way, compared to the pharaohs we have, because he accepted a conversation, by the way. He accepted a give and take, and he accepted also a challenge. He said, we'll gather all of you in one day, and you show, and he got his people and show us and saw this. So he accepted some kind of debate. The pharaohs of today, they don't have, you want to be able anyways to be there, because you will be finished way before you reach that stage. But Pharaoh, who is the symbol of tyranny, accepted that give and take and said, okay, let us meet on a day of festivity, and you show yourself and we show ourselves, etc. And only when things turned sour, that he became the tyrant again. So he gave some freedom, but if they abuse the freedom, we know how to deal with it. Happening every day, happening now. While we are sitting here, happening now. Go call home. They will tell you that there were elections, but if you increase this, get them. The same thing happening. Anyways, the confrontation happened, and when they threw their sticks and they became snakes, of course, خُيِّلَ إِلَيْهِمْ مِنْ سِحْرِهِمْ. They made an illusion, a delusion that these are snakes, which is not the real thing. But when Musa threw when he got scared, فَأَوْجَسَ فِي نَفْسِهِ خِيفَةً مُوسَى. Then Allah told him, no, throw it. He threw it, and it swallowed everything. Here again, the truth is swallowing the falsehood. Again, there is a symbolism there. In that, imagine that you are in that gathering with all those people, with Pharaoh and his cabinet, with Musa and his brother, with those technicians and know-how magicians, and a whole group of people cheering. And this happened. Whom is the most amenable to discover the truth? The magicians, of course. Everybody else is still watching the show. It's an interesting show. Some snakes ate one snake, and one snake ate the big snake, ate the small snakes. To them it is part of the show. But the ones who discovered that this is real business were the magicians. It is their forte, it is their vocation. They knew that this is not magic anymore. This is why we find that sudden burst of light, sudden conversion of those magicians. In a moment they change from professionals who was coming to take money to defy the guy to believers who are ready to be martyred and ready to be killed. فَقْدِ مَا أَنْتَ قَادٍ إِنَّمَا تَقْضِي هَذِهِ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا. Then the story will go on that Musa will deliver his people out, and his people will be fooled by the guy who told them to worship the calf, and Allah tells him, why did you leave them? Of course, he appointed his brother there in his place, and he said, عَجِلْتُ إِلَيْكَ رَبِّي لِتَرْضَى. I thought I'm doing something good, so I came rushing. But here is the lesson, that at certain vulnerable periods, the leader should never leave his people. Because this is exactly, they are very vulnerable, they are coming out of slavery, they are not used to freedom, they are still adulterated by the idea of worshipping calves. That was the way of worship in Egypt. One man could fool all of them. They didn't listen to Aaron. Who you think you are? We will wait, we'll keep worshiping him until Musa comes. And Musa comes very irate, very upset, very frustrated. He holds his brother, and here is the second lesson in the story. He tells his brother, why, when you saw them going astray this way, why didn't you leave them and join me? And here comes a very profound word. He says, إِنِّي خَشِيتُ أَن تَقُولَ فَرَّقْتَ بَيْنَ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ. I was afraid that you say you divided the people. So here is a completely new dimension, the intactness of a community, the importance of keeping the community together. So from the point of view of Musa, the whole thing is to worship God. Now they are worshipping a calf. You should have nothing to do with them. Aaron, Harun was, no, I'll keep them together. Until you come back, probably we can guide them. There are more than one right, brothers and sisters. That whole miserable vision that we have, that there is only one right, if you don't do that, you are wrong, is not the way to go. Both of them are right. And interestingly, the Quran never told us who was right. The story went on and on and on to cover other areas. So in summary, although I did not cover Musa completely, but I hope that I could illustrate to you the story style in the Quran and how it is not repetitious as people think. It is using context to deliver morals that will vary according to which angle of the story you look at. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Thank you. He tells me I can take a couple of questions. I see no hands. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. About what? Zakat. Yeah, although it is... How about if you ask me outside so that we don't... Yes, sorry. No,
not a question, but it's a request to speak about the stories of the Quran in more details.
Yeah, I think it is a legitimate request. When we give you the different suggestions for the next course or courses, you might write down stories of the Quran. Thank you very much. Yes?
Last week, Hathout mentioned in passing that we celebrate the celebration of Moses, and he mentioned Ashura. Can you give us the significance of that?
Question? Yeah, I repeat the question that Sister Aqila is saying that Brother Hassan Hathout last week when he was talking about Jesus said that we celebrate Moses in Ashura. In one of the narrations about Ashura, that the Prophet knew that the Jews were fasting and they were commemorating the Passover. They said we are celebrating